Good afternoon, students. Welcome you all to StudyIQ IAS English. This is Vishal, Faculty of Law Optional and Indian Polity at StudyIQ. In today's video, we're going to discuss the case of Nithari killings. Why this case is important? Who were the people who were behind Nithari killings? Ultimately, Supreme Court has acquitted the person who was accused of killing 19 children. Now the question again surfaces that after 20 years of those horrible events, who was the person or who was the entity that was behind all of those killings? Now recently, a news erupted in the media circles of this country that a person by the name of Surendra Koli has been acquitted by the Supreme Court while filing a curative petition. Now, the question is, what are Nithari killings? Who is this person by the name of Surendra Koli, and why his acquittal has resulted in the media and general public in this country erupting in furor? I would like to tell you that in year 2005, several reports of children undergoing missing were reported before the police authorities in Noida in Uttar Pradesh. So when the police started investigation, they were not able to find any substantial clue. They were not able to find the whereabouts of the children who have gone missing. The number of the children were approximately 19. A lot of them, all of them were below 18 years of age. Suddenly, one day, several children were playing in a particular locality in Sector 31 in Noida. Now these children, as they were playing cricket, so their ball went into a drain. So when one of the children went nearby the drain to collect the ball, he noticed a human hand that was floating in the drain. Now, obviously, any child would get disturbed, and he raised hue and cry. So all the people in the locality, they gathered there, they called the police. Police came and police started excavating the drain. Now, after excavation, police found out dead bodies of several children. And not only the dead bodies, the hands, the legs, the skull, and other parts of bodies of the children that were dismembered. Now this, as the revelations come into the media, it created outrage all over the country. The media and the public, they were shocked to know that dead bodies of children are found in the drain, and the dead bodies were dismembered before they were being dumped into the drain. When the police started investigation, they actually zeroed in a particular house. So behind this drain, there was a bungalow by the title of D5. Now police zeroed in, and police somehow figured out that the people living in that particular bungalow, they were responsible for the kidnapping, killing, and dismemberment of the dead bodies of the children. The two people who were suspected by the police, their names were Maninder Singh Pandher, the owner of the house, and Surendra Koli. That means the domestic servant. Now, police conducted investigation. A charge sheet was filed before a district court. Obviously, the case was taken over by CBI, so the charge sheet was filed before the CBI court. And the court convicted both of them on certain evidences. Now, they both filed appeal. Shockingly, in appeal, the Allahabad High Court acquitted the owner, that means Maninder Singh Pandher. Allahabad High Court also acquitted Surendra Koli, that means the domestic servant, in 12 out of 13 cases. But only in one case of the murder and kidnapping of Rimpa Haldar, obviously she was also a child who was the victim. Only in one case, the Allahabad High Court felt that the accused has committed kidnapping and murder. Now, in this case, the Allahabad High Court gave a judgment that the accused Surendra Koli, he has committed abduction, he has committed kidnapping and murder of the child. So obviously, he was held guilty of violating the laws, and he was given death penalty. Now, he filed an appeal before Supreme Court, that was rejected. He again filed a review petition before the Supreme Court, that also was rejected. Now, on Monday, that means November 10, 2025, he filed a curative petition before the Supreme Court, praying that he was innocent, he has not committed kidnappings or murders of the children. Shockingly, Supreme Court accepted his curative petition, and Supreme Court gave a judgment that we do not have any credible piece of evidence on the basis of which we can convict this person of kidnapping and murders. So the conviction of this person is set aside and now he is acquitted. That means now he can walk free of the prison. Now the question looms down 20 years or 20 years down the line. The question has again resurfaced. Who were the people, or who was the person who was responsible for killing of 19 children? See, these innocent faces, they were the people, they were the children who were killed. Their bodies were dismembered and their bodies were thrown into the drain. Now in this particular case, again, we will try to figure out what were the reasons why the person who was convicted by the trial court as well as the Allahabad High Court and whose appeal and review petition was rejected by the Supreme Court, finally, why did he gain acquittal? Why was he acquitted by the Supreme Court? Where were the lapses? Where were the lapses in police investigation? Why police could not gather credible piece of evidences? Is it not the case of dereliction of duty by the police? Is it not the case of negligence by the law enforcement agencies, especially CBI and forensic analysis team, that they were not able to secure proper evidences so as to sustain a conviction in the court of law? Now, this is a very big question, because the question again looms. Death of 19 children, and that too in a very horrible manner, and who is guilty at all? Who is the person who can be held responsible for this? Because now, as Surendra Koli has been acquitted by the court, now obviously he is not guilty. Now, then the question arises, who is guilty? So in this particular video, we're going to discuss the series of events, and finally, we have a bigger question at hand, that why police was so negligent in conducting investigation that it was not able to secure any credible piece of evidence on the basis of which conviction could have been sustained in the court of law. See, now the story I told you, Nithari killings, obviously it came to light with the discovery of skeletal remains of 8 children. And before 2005 and 2006, more than 19 children were reported missing from the area. Now the people who were accused were the businessman Mohinder Singh Pandher, obviously whose house was situated just behind the drain from where the bodies, the skeleton remains of the children were found out, and Surendra Koli, the domestic help. Obviously, the domestic help. Now, I've told you, Surendra Koli was the main accused. Secondly, Mohinder Singh Pandher, he was also the accused because he was accused of conspiracy with Surendra Koli. Now, in the initial trial, the CBI court in Ghaziabad convicted both of them. They convicted Surendra Koli in at least 12 cases. But the owner of the house was acquitted in multiple cases, but he was convicted in 3 cases for rape and murder of the children. That means the CBI court found out that the servant, he was responsible for the kidnapping and murder of the children, as well as his owner. The owner of the house is also responsible for rape, kidnapping and murder of 3 children. Not all of them, but 3. Now, what was the piece of evidence that led the CBI court to figure out that both of them were guilty? There were certain piece of evidences. One was confession. One was confession of Surendra Koli. He confessed before a magistrate that he himself has lured the children. He has killed them either by strangulating or by hitting them with a sharp weapon, and then he dismembered their bodies and threw them into the drain. One, the major piece of evidence was the confession. Secondly, additional evidences include that when Surendra Koli was taken into the police custody, he gave certain piece of information to the police. He stated that I have killed the children and the dead bodies of the children are lying in the drain. So when the police excavated the drain, so they obviously found out the dead bodies. So obviously now the police was able to connect the links, because a person who knew where the dead bodies or the remains of the children are, so obviously he would be the person who would be guilty, because otherwise how would he know, or how would he be aware of where the dead bodies of children were? Second, the most important piece of evidence was that the police recovered a knife. From the terrace of the house where both the servant and the owner lived. Now, there were 3 pieces of evidence, and on the basis of that, the CBI court convicted the servant for 12 cases and the owner for 3 cases. Now, in an appeal in 2018, Allahabad High Court acquitted the owner. His name was Maninder Singh Pandey in all the cases. The court said confession was given by the servant, not by the owner. On the basis of confession of the servant, we cannot convict the owner, because obviously his piece of confession is not credible. His piece of confession is credible evidence against himself only, but not for his owner. Secondly, Allahabad High Court also acquitted Surendra Koli in 12 cases. See, he was convicted by the lower court, but on appeal, the High Court, Allahabad High Court, overturned the conviction and acquitted him in 12 cases. However, in one case, in Rimpa Haldar, she was the victim. Obviously, she was the child victim. In that case, the court held no. He is a person who is guilty of murder, because there were certain witnesses who said, we have seen Surendra Koli, he was trying to lure Rimpa Haldar into his house. That means there were certain witnesses who have seen that he was trying to lure a child to walk into his house. So court said that there are enough evidences and he is guilty of killing Rimpa Haldar. Now against these acquittals, obviously appeals were filed in Supreme Court. Supreme Court dismissed all of the appeals. Supreme Court said all of these appeals are not credible or they cannot be sustained in law. That means now Koli was acquitted in 12 cases. However, the court said only in one case, Rimpa Haldar kidnapping and murder case, he was still guilty. So therefore, he was still in the prison. Now 11th November, as he filed a curative petition, because only in one case he was held guilty by Allahabad High Court, he filed an appeal before the Supreme Court, rejected, filed a review petition, rejected. So he tried to take the last chance and he filed a curative petition before the Supreme Court. Now in this curative petition, the Supreme Court overturned the judgment of Allahabad High Court as well as its own previous judgment. Supreme Court stated that to convict a person in a law of crime, the court has to follow a fair and reasonable procedure. The court said we cannot convict a person only on the ground of suspicion. We need credible piece of evidence, because in criminal laws there is a standard of evidence. That means a person can only be convicted of committing a particular crime if it is proved beyond reasonable doubt that he has committed the crime. That means there is not even an iota of doubt left that he has not committed the crime. So if from the evidences it is proved without any or beyond any doubt that he is the person who has committed the crime, only then conviction of a person can be sustained. Conviction can be sustained. The court said in this particular case, there was no credible piece of evidence. There was only suspicion. There were only allegations and counter allegations, but no credible piece of evidence. The court said that Allahabad High Court has acquitted Surendra Koli in 12 cases because the Allahabad High Court itself said evidence is not sufficient. Then how on the same piece of evidence can he be convicted in the 13th case? Because evidences were the same. If evidences were the same, then in 12 cases he was acquitted. That how only in 13th cases can he be convicted for the same piece of evidence? Court said this is nothing but miscarriage of justice. Allahabad High Court has committed error. Even we have also committed error in an appeal and review petition. The court said in all of these cases, no credible piece of evidence was presented before the court against Surendra Koli, through which we can say that he is the person who has committed the crime. Now the thing here is, was the police or law enforcement authorities not able to gather enough evidence or admissible evidence so that his conviction can be sustained? The inquiry and investigation obviously went for a long period of time. Police was under tremendous pressure because the killings were not only of one person, it was of 19 children. Obviously, that itself sounds very horrible and horrendous. So the police would be under tremendous pressure. So now, rather than conducting the investigation in a proper, professional manner and to obtain evidences in such a manner so that they can be sustained in a court of law, the police only relied on confession of the accused. The police relied on the confession of the accused. That means police did not secure any credible piece of evidence. Now, I would explain how negligence by the police authorities resulted in miscarriage of justice. After 20 years, the question is, who was responsible? The accused has been set free by the Supreme Court. Then who was the person who was responsible? If police would have acted with alertness, if police would have done their work in a professional manner, the culprit would be behind bars. He would be facing punishment. But now, because of their dereliction of duty, because of them being unprofessional, because of them doing their work in an unprofessional manner, the real culprit is not behind bars. He is roaming freely. I don't know where, but the person who caused death of 19 innocent children, if the police was a bit more sincere, bit more professional, they would have obtained enough evidence to convict the real accused. Now, where were the lapses in evidences that were gathered by the police? See, first lapse was, the court said that the confession made by the accused, Surendra Koli, before the court is not, it cannot be relied. Why cannot be relied? Because confession means it must be voluntary. It must be voluntary. That means the person would make the confession out of his own choice. But in this particular case, the confession was made under the influence or the pressure or fear of the police. Because when the accused was making confession before the court, the police officers were moving in and out of the courtroom. And secondly, the confession itself seems that the police have taught him, tutored him how to give a confession. That means the court said the confession was not at all voluntary. It was induced by threat. So it cannot be taken as a piece of evidence, Secondly, the court said the remains of the children. Now the second piece of evidence was that the accused gave information to the police. On the basis of that, police excavated the drains and found the dead bodies of the children. That means on the basis of this information, important piece of facts were discovered. That means the accused knew where the dead bodies of the children were. That means obviously he would be the person who has committed murder. But the court said that his disclosure was not exclusive disclosure. There were a lot of people in the vicinity, there were a lot of people in the neighborhood who knew the fact that the dead bodies of the children are lying in the drain. So that means the dead bodies of the children, they were not discovered exclusively on the basis of information given by the accused. So therefore that means we cannot point out that he was the person who exclusively knew where the dead bodies are. That means we cannot point out that he was the murderer. Thirdly, court said the forensic team, they have properly investigated the house in which the servant and the owner was staying. There was no trace of murder, of 19 children. If 19 children would have been kidnapped, abducted, killed and dismembered, there would be some trace that could have been found by forensic teams. Obviously, forensic teams conduct an in-depth analysis. So if there was any killing in that particular house, forensic teams would have gathered any credible piece of evidence. There was no traces were found. Fourthly, the knife that was recovered from the house of the accused, it cannot be proved that the killings were done on the base or because the killings were done through this particular knife. Because when the knife was examined, there was no traces of blood found. So the court said, we do not have any piece of evidence. The prosecution did not even establish that the cut marks on the bones were consistent with the implements or the knives. So the court had neither the confession nor the discoveries made nor the forensic analysis established that it was the accused who was responsible for the murders. So in this case, you can see the police, they were not able to ensure that the confession that was made before the magistrate should have been voluntary. One. Secondly, they were not able to conduct proper forensic analysis so as to ensure that any traces of blood, any traces of any evidence would be found in the house of the accused. Because of their loose investigation, because of their loose gathering of evidences, the person, the real culprit is not behind bars. And the children who were brutally killed, dismembered, they cannot seek justice. They cannot gain justice. Now, Before finishing, I would like to tell you what is curative petition, because in this particular case, the accused has used curative petition. The curative petition means a petition in which it is the last instrument. So Supreme Court is the highest court of appeal in this country. If the Supreme Court rejects any appeal, the concerned person can file a review petition. If the review petition is also dismissed, the last instrument that a person can have is a curative petition. He can file a curative petition before the court of law. Obviously, objective behind giving this opportunity to the accused is that the process of law shall not be abused, or he shall be given every opportunity to present his case before the court. Curative petition can only be availed of in certain conditions. One, if there is a violation of natural justice, that means the person against whom a decision has been given by the Supreme Court, the person was not given the right to hearing. He was not able to present his case before the court. That means the court gave decision only on the basis of evidences of one party only. Secondly, the judge was biased. Judge had some interest in the subject matter, or judge had some connection with any of the parties. That means judge was not impartial. That means judge has given a judgment by behaving in a biased manner. And thirdly, the judgment was such that if the judgment were not overturned, if it was not overturned, it would have resulted in miscarriage of justice. The court said in this particular case, the accused was acquitted in 12 cases. On the basis of same piece of evidence, he was convicted in the 13th case. So it is beyond any reason to say that the judgment was anyway tenable in law. So there was a miscarriage of justice. So to rectify the miscarriage of justice, the court entertained the curative petition and acquitted the accused. So now all of us have understood why a person who was accused in 13 cases and who was accused of killing 19 children was set aside by the court, because the court could not get a proper piece of evidence, a single piece of evidence on the basis of which the court could have convicted the accused. Now this points to a larger failure, a systemic failure, an institutional failure in how law enforcement authorities conduct their investigation. Serious reforms have to be brought in law enforcement authorities so as to ensure that investigations are conducted in a proper manner and the real culprit are punished through the process of law. So that's all for today. We'll see you again in next video. Thanks. Goodbye. Jai Hind.